Hrudi nirantaram bhasati swayam likyate katham hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham maham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati hrudi vishamanasa swam chinvata majjata chalanrodha atmanishto bhavatvam deham mrunmayavat jadatmakam aham buddhirna tasyastyतो नाहं तत्तथभावशुप्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भाव कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिय दृष्टात्मनिष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं. Namo Ramana. We have been meditating on the verses of Anma bodham, the Tamil translation of Atma bodha, the Sanskrit original being composed by Adi Shankarar. We have been relying on the Tamil translation of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We have been meditating in the last segment on verses on the nature of Brahman, from verses between 54 onwards. We could come up to 62. Up to verse number 64, it was supposed to be the nature of Brahman. 63 and 64 were still pending. And the last segment is getting back to the teaching of this work. Verses 64 to 68 were supposed to be how the self-knowledge itself is Brahmajnana, because the work is on Atma bodham. Now talking something about Brahman and living at that may bring a possibility that the knowledge of the Brahman remains merely intellectual, whereas the sadhana is re-emphasized and the cycle of manana is taken back to the beginning of Anma bodham. through the last segment of verses, which is how Brahman is self-knowledge, which the work asks us to do sadhana about. So, one reading up to what is the nature of Brahman is not completion of the Anubhava, may not be completion of the Anubhava. So, the Acharya quite beautifully takes us to the heart of the work and says that the Atma Jnana itself is Brahma Jnana. We can include these two verses. The whole work is so seamlessly moving that we can include the verses 63 and 64 in this segment. In this segment of how Brahma Jnana cannot be different from the Anma bodham, the self-knowledge which has been taught as sadhana in this work by the Acharya. So, in that sense, we could have added 63 and 64, though the reference of the commentators was that 63, 64 is also part of what is Brahman. The movement of the work is so seamless that we can take that two verses and see it from this perspective, that the Acharya is putting us back on track. We have found ourselves that the Brahman permeates the whole creation and the meditator inside and outside, without any division as inside and outside. And we find a similar pointer in science, of which I had shared a video in the initial stages, which is a discussion about the various dimensions of living by Carl Sagan. It's a 7-8 minute video where the scientists have got an inkling of this, but at least in that investigation they have not been able to take it further. But we can take what is mentioned there, that the single dimension of a straight line, let's say it has length or you call it breadth, it doesn't make any difference between length and breadth. If a dimension is only length, then a rectangle which has length and breadth, that two-dimensional existence both permeates and transcends the single dimension, and the three-dimensional cube permeates and transcends the two-dimensional square or rectangle. And of course, we find that the fourth dimension could be of the nature of two nestled cubes, which is nothing but a shadow of the fourth dimension. So we practically applied it and found that Indriyani paranyahu indriyabhyah param manah manasastu parabuddhi yo buddhe paratastu saha kayavang manah karyamuttamam pujanam japas chintanam karma. Each of the subtler modes of perception or existence, they permeate the gross and they transcend the gross. That was what was mentioned in how the Brahman, which is the highest mode of existence, beyond which there is nothing, there cannot be anything else. The division between subject and object, the participator in an experience and the land of experience, that division is gone in the Brahman. And that Brahman, the highest dimension, permeates all the dimensions. It permeates the Baddha lokas, it permeates the Mukti lokas, it permeates the divine entities, it permeates all the Manushya and Asuras. It permeates and transcends them. That is what we found in the last verse of the nature of Brahman. So we take it forward from there. 63rd verse. Brahma Mulatir Brahmam Ulahir Piridahum. அந்த பிரம்மத் அணுவில் பிரிதாய், அணுவு இல்லை பிரிதாய், பிரம்மத்திற்கு அந்நியம் ஏதும் அவிர்ந்தால் அது மித்தை உண்ணுக காணல் நீர் ஒத்து. So the meditator is now through these two verses brought from world to Brahman. In the verse after that, from senses or perception to Brahman, and in the verse after that, from Jiva to Brahman. And in the last verse of these four verses, it will be the Brahman shines self-luminously in the heart. How we can look at these verses? This particular verse is how the world you are pursuing, the world of objects, is all Brahman only. How to come to that? Brahmam ulahil piridahum. Brahman being the highest dimension, it is always greater than and permeating the scene. Now, one of the scientific experiments that we have mentioned along the way is something called as double slit experiment. How the very act of seeing alters the nature of the scene. The scientists feel somehow it goes and alters the nature of the scene, but that is not the teaching of Vedanta. The teaching of Vedanta is that the what is only the Brahman, but your nature of seeing, which we are going to see in the next verse after the next, the nature of seeing makes it appear like world or could make it look as it is. So that is the beauty of Vedanta. The Vedanta says that it is not that it is going and changing the scene. It is that the scene is also Brahman only, but the medium you are using, that will make you look at the Brahman as multiple objects, as the Stula Shariras strewn all around. Or you could see it as the Brahman itself. Now, the indication given is that Brahman ulagirku piridagam, that how to identify, how to know the Brahman, that it cannot be what is the scene. And we can always understand that perception is always higher dimension than the perceived, and the perceiver is higher dimension than the perception, which the scientists don't apply, though they have both the knowledge side by side, that the higher dimension permeates and transcends the lower dimension. They never work out that perception of a world is a different dimension from the world, is a deeper dimension. Though it appears to be part of the world, it's a deeper dimension if you want to analyze. Because where is perception in the cuboid? In the three-dimensional world of objects, where is perception? So always the rule is perception is of deeper dimension than the perceived, and the perceiver is of deeper dimension than perception. So naturally, by the rules they themselves have arrived at, very simple rules, that the three-dimensional existence permeates and transcends two-dimensional existence. Naturally, the Gandharva Loka, which is supposed to be the Loka of performing arts, all the entities are using the Prana Shakti for the artistic way of living that permeates and transcends this loka. The each higher dimension, if you think of mukti lokas, where doership is not there, it's only a change of perspective. The devotee becomes so devoted that he understands no individual has any doership here. The very same here and now becomes mukti loka. So that is what we are going to see in the next few verses, how Atma Jnana is going to make one perceive and be the Brahman. Here in this verse, it is beautifully said that Brahman ulagatil piridagam, whatever world of perception you may be in this world, you may be in the world of performing arts, you may be in the world of pure divinity, where you are sanctioning boons to others. In all those worlds, here the verse the Acharya is saying, the Brahman is piridagam, it is apart from that, it is not stuck in the seen world. ஆனால் பிரம்மத்திற்கு அந்நியம் அணுவும் இல்லை. But nothing, not even an atom can be apart from the Brahman. Now he wants us to identify with the Brahman in the previous verse, isn't it? That up to previous verse, he has talked about in the sadhana, the Arunodayam, then Jnanodayam, then the merger of the individual with Brahman. 8 verses on the nature of Brahman. So the Acharya is now taking the possibility that we have identified with the Brahman. If so identified, then the last line says, Brahmatarku anniyam edum avirdal adu mittai. Now that you have completed the Brahmajnana verses, 8 verses that Brahman is permeating inside and outside. Now you should identify with that. He is talking to the one identified in the Brahman. He is saying, if you see anything other than you, if you see anything alien to you, then you should know that that which you see as apart from you is only a mirage, is kanal nirut. See how beautifully the Acharya is bringing us that the possibility that some sadhaka could have completed and attained Brahmajnana and now is abiding is all right, and now he is addressing that person and opening up to the possibility that he might or might not have completed the sadhana. So if you are still seeing other, that means you have not completed the sadhana. So he will now talk of, go back to Atma Vichara and Vichara about the in the next few verses. But see how this verse turns around, that opens up the possibility that the sadhaka is still hanging in balance. He has done the Shravana, he has done the Manana, he has done partly the Nididhyasana Abhyasa, but still the journey is not complete. The identity with the Brahman is not complete. The Acharya opens up that possibility. He says that Brahmatil Anuvum Anniyam irundal. He is not talking of Brahman as alien to you, because in the previous verse he has said that Brahman permeates you and is you are filled with Brahman. Now if that identity is there, such a one will now shift the inquiry to, he's not talking of some Brahman being apart from the world and some Brahman to which no world can be apart. He's actually talking about me, that if I find anything alien to me, I should ask, for whom is this? If I find some child to whom I have to teach something and the child is getting anxious, then I am connected to that child at the emotional level, I am connected to the child at the mind level. The root here is the child, the connection in the mind level, the connection in the emotional level are all mithyam, are all like the mirage. Only your Brahmajnana is real. You hold yourself and let the teaching happen in the Brahmajnana, that there is no child apart, there is no emotional connection apart, there is no mental subsidence required apart, that your self-attention is remaining in Brahmajnana and whatever is happening is also Brahma. If you consider that something has happened to the child, then immediately you should come back to the Atmajnana, to the, because that is alien, that is mirage. If you feel some good you have done, you have spoken something about the Atma bodha, that is mirage. That I spoke for 1 hour on Atma bodha, immediately get back to your source, says the Acharya. So here beautifully he opens up both possibilities. Somebody who is now identified with Brahman but slipping up slightly, somebody who is not able to identify, still takes Brahman as Anyam, can go back and start the whole thing, because now he is going to point out that the identity with the Atma Swarupa and Brahmajnana are one and the same. If that one and the same nature of self-knowledge and Brahmajnana is not actualized, doesn't matter. Like we have come upon the greatest information possible in any loka. Now all we have to do is do an internal sadhana to fructify this. So be grateful for getting the information about Atma Bodha and get back. Suppose you feel, I still feel alien to the Brahman, get back to the verses, start the Vicharam and Atma Vichara, Atma Dhyana again and again. Now he is going to talk in these lines, that don't consider self-knowledge and Brahmajnana to be different. the self-knowledge attainment, he will now start focusing, because he wants us to actually be in the knowledge of it, in the existence of it, not merely intellectually. No, that is not the purpose of this work. 64, எது எது காணவும் கேட்கவும் ஏயும் அது பிரம்மத்திற்கு அந்நியமாகாது. So previously the very existence of the object was taken, that the existence of the object the Brahman is apart from it, but that object cannot be apart from the Brahman. So you identify with the Brahman. Here, instead of saying the very existence of the object, the Acharya comes to your senses. If you remember that the Acharya is wanting us to look at our upadhis only, not the loka itself. That the upadhi dropping itself is dropping of the loka, he has highlighted earlier. So if somebody remembers that, then he says that instead of using the world existence, he uses the word எது எது காணவும் கேட்கவும் ஏயும். Whatever you are able to see or whatever you are able to hear, taste, touch and smelling is included here. So he has brought down from the objects to the indriya, to the sensory upadhis. Now எது எது காணவும் கேட்கவும் ஏயும் அது பிரம்மத்திற்கு அந்நியமாகாது. Because in the previous verse itself he has said, Brahmatirka Anyama edu kandalam, whatever appears as alien to Brahman, alien to self-knowledge, is only carnal near, is only mirage. So you have to drop it and come back to the Brahmajnana, Atmajnana. Here he has shifted from the actual objects of perception to the senses. And we should recall in Ulladanarpada, Bhagavan does the same thing, that the world, can it exist without a body? Then in the next verse he says, the world is nothing but a summation of the sensory perception. And all these senses are perceived by one ray of mind, dividing itself as 5. Therefore, the whole world is nothing but manomayam, is nothing but made of mental stuff. Bhagavan would take us from the world to Atma in that direction. Here too the Acharya, from the world of objects, if you can understand that that's all Brahmaswarupa, fine. Otherwise, if you remember, he did not want us to deal with the gross objects. Dealing with our senses itself cuts us off from the gross objects. You need not worry whether you are going to perceive. When my sister was going to school, the school was about 2 kilometers. She was in 9th, 10th. I still remember hearing my mother say, always keep your eyes down turned, keep your eyes on your feet. She had to walk through the streets of Chennai, about 2 kilometers across Gopalapuram to the Gopalapuram Girls High School she had to go. And Amma used to tell her, that means when you avert the senses, whether you are perceiving a good person with good intention or bad person with bad intention, you are breaking your relationship from your side. That I don't want either a good person to influence me or a bad person to be of influence to me, at least from my side. That used to be the practice Amma used to say to her, that Indriyani Paranyahu, the Indriyas are greater than or of a greater dimension than the world. And that is why the Acharya asks us to drop the upadhis instead of worrying about how am I going to cross all these objects, all this time and space which appear so huge. So the Acharya shifts to எது எது காணவும் கேட்கவும் ஏயும் அது பிரம்மத்திற்கு அந்நியமாகாது. It cannot be other than this purana that is going on inside you. அதுவுமே தத்துவ ஞானத்தால் சச்சிதானந்தமாய் அது பிரம்மமாம். That whatever you have been able to hear, whatever you have been able to sense, is nothing but this purana. Whatever objects you have seen is nothing but the I. As I said during the Brahmajnana verses also, let us, for practicality of it, take the Brahmajnana as Akandakara Atma Vritti, as the Spurana which Bhagavan refers, as I, which is going on undividedly in the sense not divided as subject and object. So whatever you see as subject and object division, either as a gross object or as a sense of perception. Here the Acharya is saying both the divisions involve division of subject and object. That is false. Therefore, these divided perceptions are nothing but the undivided self, undivided Atma Swarupa, which is Brahmajnana. We had brought both together. Brahmajnana is the Swaswarupa, the Aham Spurana. So we brought that together so that there is a clear understanding. In 63rd verse, the Acharya is saying, whatever objects you are seeing, that is in the false division of subject-object, bring it back to Spurana. For whom is this? Any sensory perception is which is responsible for, suppose you have worked out that it is not the object that is at fault, it is only my eyes, only my ears that I had to work on, then that sensory perception being perceived by you is still subject-object. Take it back to the Spurana. Then comes the any kind of perception. Sarvattum Sarandadam Sachitanandam Brahmatai Jnanakkan Petran Darisipan. Who will perceive this Purana? Only one who has Jnanakkan. Jnanakkan illadan nannane kaatchulir banuvai andan pol. The reference, the analogy is not so important that a blind person is not able to perceive the sun. Similarly, the one who is not having Jnanakkan. Jnanakkan means from sensory perception, he has brought us to that mind which is inward turned. For the moment, let us keep it like that. That any outward turned nature of the mind is Ajnanam. Any outward turned movement is Ajnanam. The outward turned movement towards the world objects, the outward turned movement of the senses, the outward turned movement of the breath, and the outward turned movement of the I thought towards any other thought, however great that thought may be. Now, this covers the whole area of Ajnanakkan. The Ajnanakkan is whenever there is outward turned perception. Let's say Stula Sharira relationship is there, you are living in a team, and something is happening which you feel is not very comfortable to you. Immediately the mind blames the other. Immediately the mind says, what fault I can find with the other or with the situation. Bhagavan is saying here, from there you begin your Jnanakkan journey. The Jnanakkan would first say, what is it that I can correct in myself? Because that whole sense of that being not all right, the other person is not all right, is a mirage, is what the verses earlier have said. So first turn towards the Jnana direction. Keep the Jnanakkan pending. What is the Jnana direction? The Jnana direction is to turn from outward to inward. Outward either for seeking solutions or outward either to blame. That is Ajnanakkan. First draw it from the sensory world to the senses, to the breath, to the mind, to the eye. The eye should be taken to the source. That is why Bhagavan says, who am I? Is the most direct path. It does not even take another great being's name, Nama, which could prevent us from all other objective spaces. Even that you don't hold it objectively, says Bhagavan. Even my own name, even Ramana Nama, which would actually rid us of all the other loka problems, all other dimensional problems, that has the power. That Nama has the power. But he is saying, why do you treat me alien? Why do you treat me as something other than you? Why do you treat me as an object of perception? I am permeating you. I am the Brahman. I am the Spuranam. I am permeating subject and object. You don't treat me as alien and hold me as a thought. Now turn inward. From there, have the Jnanakkan. What is the Jnanakkan? Not to treat even that Ishvara Shakti as alien to you. Aniya bhavatil avanahamahu ananiya bhavame undipara anaitilum muttamam undipara. That don't even treat the Ishvara as the last object with which you have driven away every other object. He is permeating you right from the beginning. So hold the I seek the source of the I or the truth of the I as the Brahmajnana is the teaching of Bhagavan, and that is why it is called as the direct path, because right from beginning, sensory world, sensory objects, outward turned breath, outward turned mind, all are corrected, and one is asked to do this one of these two things. Whence am I? That is diving deep to find the source of the I, or who am I, which is finding the truth of the I, relentlessly holding this only, not even allowing a single thought as an objective truth. The truth of Bhagavan having completely permeated us. Hariyaditara jivara ahavarisa guhail arivairami paramatman arunachalaram. That Paramatma shining within my eye as the source of my eye is Bhagavan. And that is the sadhana towards which the Acharya is driving us back. Suppose you have not completed, you don't understand what the Brahma Swarupa is. He is saying you can't see the Brahma Swarupa in the world without the Jnanakan. What is the Jnanakan? Ahakkan. Turn it inwards, and Atma Vichara is the best practice of making our Jnanakan clear. Atma Vichara is the best practice that will take us directly to the Spurana. The Spurana itself is the Jnanakan. There is no difference between the Brahma Swarupa, the Atma Swarupa, and the Jnanakan. You can't experience the Ullapurul remaining apart from the Ullapurul. One can experience that which is only by being that which is. Jnanakan Petran Darisipan. Jnanakan Illan Darsika Mudiyad. That means the one who is still outward turned, interested in blaming or praising the other, cannot have darshan of the Brahman, cannot have darshan of or abidance in the Atma Swarupa. Is the verse number 65. 66. Shravanam Adigalal Desuru Jnanam Eriyanil Kaichi Eduka Sarvamalavumu Poi Jeevan Uruvil Pon Pol Nirmalanai Tan Olirvan. So, having heard this whole work with Shraddha, having understood that the world is nothing but Brahman, the senses perception is nothing but Brahman, the mind has to be turned inward in Jnanakan. Having understood all this, the Jiva, the fellow who was feeling, the persona which was feeling, I am separate from this Purana, now it realizes, I am myself that. That means he has slowly brought us inward. The world is Brahman, senses are Brahman, the mind is Brahman, mind has to become Jnanakan. You yourself are that. And how did you suddenly become this Spurana? Because Sarva Malamum Poi, the Atma Vicharam has removed all the Malam, all the impurities. Impurities is only Ajnana. All the Ajnana dropping off. The sadhana is only to remove Ajnana. The Brahma Swarupa, the Spurana is shining always as the Kantabharana. It is always present in us. But because of our Ajnanakan, because we were feeling the problem lies outside of us, the solution lies outside of us, Bhagavan says the problem lies inside of you. That Karuvam Ahandai Undayin Anaitum Undakum. That Chijjada Granthi is Samsaram. That the Granthi between the pure consciousness and the body, that knot, which is the highest dimension of the problem. I said all dimensions, the higher dimensions are inside. They permeate the lower dimensions. So the problem present as the highest dimension of problem is present as the Chijjada Granthi within each one of us. The problem is not present outside. Karuvam Ahandai Undai Anaitum Undahum. All the dimensions arise and you get trapped in the sensory dimension. Ahandai Indrel Indranaitum. All the dimensions drop away once the Chijjada Granthi is broken. The Chijjada Granthi is the Jiva mentioned here. The breaking of the Chijjada Granthi is the absolute purity. What is the verse here? Shravanam Adigalal Desuru Jnana Eriyanil. In that Jnanagni, in the Jnanagni, the Jiva Bhava is burnt and this Purana rises and shines. How does this happen? only because what was just like in the gold, when the impurities are melted away, the luster is natural. Luster is always the nature of gold. Similarly, the Brahman, the Swarupa, is our nature. All we have to do is get rid of that which is unnatural accumulation, unnatural dependence. Then the Jiva itself shines as the Brahman, is this verse. See how beautifully the Acharya brings the world of objects is nothing but this Purana. The senses are nothing but this Purana. The mind eye which was outward turned, which is now inward turned, that is nothing but Purana. The Jiva itself, the I itself is nothing but Spurana. When all the vasanas, all the impurities are driven away, what happens then? இதயவெளி தோன்றி இருளையழி ஞான உதயரவி ஆன்மா ஒளிரும் நிதமுமே எல்லாவற்றும் பரவி எல்லாமும் தாங்கி நின்றெல்லாம் ஒளிர்விக்கும் ஏன். When the world is seen to be this Purana, when the senses are seen to be experienced as Purana, when the mind, the other thoughts are all nothing but this Purana, when the Jiva consumes all other personas and shines as this Purana, then in that point, the Spurana rises and shines from within. The highest dimension rises and shines and consumes all the dimensions. All the lower dimensions are consumed by the highest dimension. See the beauty of it. Let's say I am not very good at music. I don't know anything about dance. Suppose I am interested in that. I have to first conceive it in my mind as an inner dimension, as a higher dimension to the dimension in which I am living. Now I have to go horizontally into that plane. Start picking up what are the notes. Spend time till the larynx get used to that kind of possibility, or start working on the motor senses by which I can pick up the dance, and I have to go horizontally into that loka and learn. Similar is the case with punyas, papas. Each of them have, for instance, in a few months we are going to get pitru karmas. The pitru paksha will be there. That is supposed to be a separate dimension. And you can see specialists meditating on what all happen in pitru loka. That means they have gone that it is a higher dimension in thought, but then they have gone horizontally into that loka. Bhagavan is saying, don't go horizontally into any loka where you are not there now. Suppose you are in Gandharva loka, doesn't matter. Don't aim for Deva loka. Go directly for the Brahman or Atma Swarupa. How is that to come? All the higher lokas will come to you as thought. As thoughts only are present, the abstract thoughts will all avail the opportunity of going horizontally. Like one single thought of a particular degree or post-graduation year will mean 3 years of work in this Thula Loka. Similarly, you want to get into a higher dimension, it will involve going and exploring that Loka horizontally. Bhagavan is saying, that thought you ask for whom, you transcend that Loka. You go to that Atma Swarupa which is permeating that Loka also. Do this without going horizontally into any thought. You keep doing this, you will come to the Spurana which permeates. In this Spurana, there is no horizontal, there is no vertical. This Spurana itself is the Loka. This Spurana itself is the deity. This Spurana itself is all the beings. The Spurana permeates itself, it permeates everything. Therefore, all the lower dimensions are permeated by this highest dimension, which is beyond all dimensions. This Purana is beyond all dimensions. There is no, in mathematics they say there are 64 dimensions possible. In string theory they say there are 10 or 11 dimensions possible. But then, and of course we have the 14 dimensions in the Upanishads. But in Brahman, there is no dimension. In the Swaswarupa, in this Purana, there is only the I. It has lost all outward nature. It is self-luminous, and that self-luminosity has no horizontality or a vertical nature. It permeates all dimensions. It transcends all dimensions because it does not have any dimensional nature. It is self-luminous, and that is present in the heart, and it will rise from within, consume the body, consume the world, consume all the possibilities that you could have ever explored, and will say, you remain content in me. I am all. I am that I am. I am that I am. Be still. Still the Jiva Bhava. Be still and know that the Brahma Swarupa, this Purana, that is my reality. In that state, my existence, of which I am ever aware, is eternal. My existence alone is the reality. In the initial stages, Bhagavan's teachings will appear as though it's very tough, that why he's not even allowing me to ask a single thing, saying, do you exist or not? We see that manifesting in the questions in Sadarshana Bhashya. We see Kapali Shastri saying, if you are not going to use Brahmastra only, I will sit. That then Bhagavan says, why I am not giving answers is that you will go horizontally with that into more doubts, because any answer means a loka. You can develop more questions from. That's what the modern research is also finding, that a good research is what good questions can be asked. They are not looking for answers anymore in good PhD papers. They are asking what good questions can raise from this, so that we can explore into the other areas, because they have understood there is no answer, and they have done this for many years, and they have realized each answer spawns multiple questions. So instead of waiting for an answer which they have to investigate and find multiple questions, they are asking research scholars, you better tell us what is a good question to ask. And the best question of all is, who am I? Which turns the eye towards the Jnanakan, which turns the world view, the sensory view, the mano view to the Atma Drishti. And the only quest to be made is, what is the truth of the eye? What is it that shines within the eye? Or whence am I? That from where? Pech muchadaki kondulle aandari. That holding the breath and speech at abeyance, not wasting energy in the outwardness of speech. When I am speaking, I have to throw out breath, and I have to regulate the throwing out of breath. So this is obviously an outward turn movement, and anything other than the Jnana Swarupa, if I use for the outward turned breath for, that is completely useless. The only thing to use the outward turned breath for is to remember the Jnana Swarupa that permeates everything. That will rise in the heart, this Purana will rise in the heart and will consume all the lokas, no dimension left. Therefore, it will consume the Vichari also and shine in all luminosity. We have come to the last verse, sir. I think we will reserve a session for this, sir, and then conclude. We will sit in Atmavachara for the next 15 minutes and take the 68th verse as a probable look back and a completion of our meditations on Atma bodham. May I request Ujjwalji to set the time at 8 o'clock? Namo Ramana.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. With the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we have been blessed to go through the Anma bodham verses of Adi Shankara Bhagavad-pada, translated by Bhagavan in his own inimitable manner. And because of that, because of their being available in Tamil, in a language which to some of us is more accessible, we are able to delve into it more intimately. And some devotees have also said that they could get clarification about Adi Shankara's original through some of the words which are used by Bhagavan in the Tamil. As I am not very familiar with both languages in that sense, but one thing is there that Nandakumar ji has brought to us the essence of Bhagavan's Anma bodham, highlighting the beauty of self-enquiry throughout this journey. And we had the opportunity to go through all the verses once again. So it's always good to do this revision because, in fact, when studying, they say the best way to study is you actually read one paragraph, the first paragraph, read the whole lesson, then go back, then read the second paragraph, read the whole lesson. So they say that's a very good method of study. Oh, somewhere I read. So to go through the whole, because it gives us a bird's eye view and it brings us to the essence of the Atma bodham, which is there, which was covered today in the last few verses, where the verses reminded me of Bhagavan's two works. One was Ashtakam and another was the Anma Vidya Geetam. Very similar, the words and the power of the self being described very beautifully in those songs as well. But the point here is something which was very crucial for us to look at was the Jnanakan and the Ajnanakan. That our drishti, our look at the world, maybe with the eyes of ignorance. And very sweetly, when Nandakumar ji gave the example of his mother telling his sister, you don't look at anybody, you don't look at the world, you let your eyes be cast downwards. So I remembered a similar instance in my life also when we traveled by bus. It was a very rare occasion. At one point, somehow we had to travel by public transport, which we had not used to. And then, when we were traveling, then I told my mother, somebody in another seat is looking at me in a manner which is very uncomfortable. Some man is looking at me, something instinctive which the women feel perhaps. So he is looking at me in a manner which is very uncomfortable. Then immediately she told me, how is it that you know he is doing so? It is because you are looking at him. Why do you want to look at anybody around you? If you don't see, you will not know whether somebody is looking at you in a good way or a bad way. So the turning that was so intuitively there for the women. It is not that they were particularly taught about it, or maybe they were taught from generations, they were taught to turn the attention back to oneself. And that is so beautiful because every time, and Nandakumarji also pointed out to us that when any problem arises in a team, we always tend to put the fault on someone else. We never internalize. Where did I go wrong? Could I have gone wrong in some way? And if we internalize also, sometimes we end up just blaming ourselves instead of actually internalizing. And what is the basic mistake that we are making? The basic, very basic mistake we are making is seeing something outside of us. That is what Bhagavan is telling over here. The Ajnana Kand itself is the basic mistake. So in Aksharamanamale, when we come to the verse, Kutramucharuttane Gunamai Panital Guru Uruvai Arunachala, Nandakumarji would often tell us Kutramucharut means even a single thought is Kutram. Even a single thought is a fault. Why is a thought a fault? Why does a thought arise in the first place? Why does the mind move in the first place? The mind moves because it feels there is something to be attained on account of that movement. Otherwise, why would it move? It moves because it thinks that by moving I will attain something. I have a desire, and that desire will be fulfilled when I move. That is what the underlying principle behind thought is. Or by my action, I will be able to achieve something, either by my action or by my knowledge or by simply even watching something, I will be happy. So when we go to the subtler planes, the grossest plane is the plane of I need to do something about this, or something needs to get done about something. That is the grossest. So when we are turning that towards the Jnana Kand, then how does Bhagavan turn our attention back? He says, it's all in the mind. There is no action that is required. It's all in your mind. It's only in the perspective that it is there. So that we were told to go to the subtler plane. And then when we look at the thoughts, then what happens? Then when we look at the thoughts, then Bhagavan says, oh, these are all just rising and subsiding. These are all actually dead. They are lifeless. So it's all in the I thought. So get to the subtlest plane of the I thought. Then when one gets to the I thought and holds on to that, then as Nandakumarji said, there is the Spurana experience. But one has to go beyond that also into the self. So that is the process of moving from outward to inward, in which case sarva malamum poi. He says all the malam kutra mutru aruthu, all the malam goes away. The malam is only impurity. What is impurity? Impurity is the mixing of something alien with an object. Say if there is milk and we add water to the milk, then the milk becomes impure because it has something other than itself. So when we boil the milk, the water evaporates and the milk becomes pure. So anything which is alien to the self, if it is mixed with the self, then it becomes impure. That is the malam. What is alien? The alien is the factor that there can be something alien. The thought that there can be something apart from the self is the only malam. So when, as we were told in these verses, as and when, if there is a thought that there can be something apart, whether it is in terms of the world, whether it's in terms of sensory perceptions, whether it's in terms of thought, or whether it's in terms of simply observing a watcher, observing the watched, or then the what was described in some of the earlier sessions as swagata bheda, that is the self experiencing itself, which is happening in the spurana. The self is reveling in itself in the spurana. It is not reveling in any other object, but it is reveling in itself. And that too, that even that movement is not required. So that is what happens, probably what is called that spurana also in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In Tripura Rahasyam, there is this instance where Hemachuda, at the instructions of Hemaleka, he goes inward and he gets into Nirvikalpa Samadhi and he is in bliss. After going through a lot of difficult sadhanas, he's finally experiencing the bliss of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and she wakes him up and he says, "Why did you wake me up when I was in such bliss?" And then she says to him, "Oh, is that so? If that bliss can be disturbed by the mere movement of your eyelids, by the opening of your eyes, if your bliss can go away, of what use is that bliss?" So the point is that it has to be sahaja, says Bhagavan, and that is the point to which self-enquiry brings us very, very naturally and very lovingly. The inquiry, it's sometimes the mind may resist that inquiry and say, "No, I don't feel like doing this inquiry, or I don't feel like asking myself this question." As Kapali or others would tell Bhagavan, don't use the Brahmastram. But ultimately, that is the greatest friend. Our greatest friend is self-inquiry. It is actually the form of Bhagavan's love for us. Because what greater love than to wipe away all the impurities and leave us absolutely pure as a self, with no need even to think of that state, when there is no need, when there is no dependency. It feels, even the thought of it feels so liberating. So that is the question. The question, who am I? The best question, as Nandakumar ji said, and which earlier I had said, I have written about it, saying it is the liberating question. It is the liberating question, the question, who am I? And if we are in every angle, Bhagwan brings us to that center, and Nandakumar ji helps us to remember that perspective which Bhagwan brings us to in self inquiry, and get back to self guidance, which is pure grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
The great
Namo Ramana.
wisdom of the earlier generations, in so many forms. They used to
Total grace, Akka. Total grace
gently
of
used to
Bhagavan.
do. My mother would also say, she said she had one another elder party or somebody who would always give away all good foodstuffs which were cooked immediately to the servants. And she would say, "என்னடி இருக்கு, இந்த வரைக்கும் தானடி இருக்கு, இது வரைக்கும் இந்த நாக்கு வரைக்கும் தானடி இருக்கு, அதுக்கு மேல என்னடி இருக்கு?"
அப்பா அப்பா அப்பா.
அவளுக்கு யாராவது கொடுப்பாளாடி, நமக்கு வேணும்னா பண்ணி சாப்பிட்டுக்கலாம், நமக்கு வேணும்னா பண்ணி சாப்பிட்டுக்கலாம், அவளுக்கு யாரு கொடுப்பா, கொடுத்துருவாங்க, ஆனா எப்படியுமே நாக்கு வரைக்கும் தானே அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவா. அந்த மாதிரி so much of it is ingrained in our people. I remember you talked about some auto rickshaw driver or somebody. ஒரு தடவை நீங்க ஏதோ சொன்னேன், who was fully ingrained in Vedanta அப்படின்னு நீங்க சொன்னது.
Correct. That we were doing the Girivalams for Archana's marriage. That he was Mohammedan auto rickshaw. He is the head of Ramanacentre Auto Center. Now he has been elected as the. So there is some sense in democracy also. The people, they have elected him as the head of the auto. This one.
Okay.
He suggested, we were doing 10. We were supposed to do 10. So we were sitting opposite that Adiyannamalai. So in our tea shop we were sitting, and he was was sharing that என்ன பண்றீங்க, இது 12 பண்ணலாம் நீங்க, நான் ஒரு மண்டலம் பண்ணிருக்கேன். He said he has done 48 Girivalams.
Okay.
So he said it will be a submultiple of, or a division of 48. So you can do 12. That will be good. அப்படின்னுட்டு how he did, he was saying that he would go up in the dead of the night so that children won't wake up. Before they wake up, he will get back so that their faith is not destroyed. Their path. He had directly come to the self. So he was an expert in Ribugita also. So, but Bhagavan's humility, see, he is the Ishvara, and he is saying he can give us anything. That's what he says in Ramana Gita also. He is capable of giving us any boons that Ishvara can give. He is not exaggerating. But then he is saying, you just get back. Don't treat me as alien. What a humility. This is the ultimate of... and we are most blessed to come to Ramaneshwara, who says, don't even hold me. Don't even hold me as... That is a big event there. Like, he can give us everything he can give. What an extraordinary blessing to come to Bhagwan and his Shakti. His Shakti only can drag us from the place where we are. There is no way we can claim any independent journey to have been made here. Then he says, as you were saying, you came here naturally, you did not come with my help. That Ishvara is telling. The person who has dragged us by the collar and brought, he is saying it is natural for the droplet to come to the Brahman. You have not come with my aid. What humbleness!
So we're going to present that tomorrow, sir. For the inspection.